The title of this session is Creating All You Desire, recorded June 14th, 1966.
The subject, of course, is truth, God, and I preferably like to call it happiness, because in the end we discover that the God we're seeking is the ultimate happiness with no sorrow whatsoever. This makes God far more intimate, more knowable than just using the word God or some of the other words that have been used. The word self, with a capital S, is a much closer, a more meaningful word to all of us than the word God is. God, to each one of us, is the concept that we have, and more often than not, God in people's minds is the greatest person we could think of within our own concept, just the greatest of everything. And God is not exactly that. God we call the self because the inner self of each one of us is that God that we are seeking. The God we are seeking gives us the ultimate happiness because it is without limitation. Each and every one of us, here and now, is that unlimited being with no limits whatsoever, acting as though we are limited and fully convinced, most of us, that we are limited. And since God, or the self, or the very being that we are, is changeless and eternal, we can only be that and nothing else. We are right now that infinite being called God, pretending that we are not, setting up an apparency called the world, an apparency called diversification, otherness, and we have lost sight of the fact that we have set up this falsity called the world, and we began to really believe that this little false projection we have set up is real. But we can never, ever let go of being that which we really are, the infinite self. Now, all troubles stem from not knowing, from not accepting the infinite being that we are. So the purpose of my being here is to help you let go of the false concepts that we are limited beings. And the way I do that is to keep it as simple as possible by trying to show you that the only thing that covers up this infinite being that we are is the sense of egoity, the sense of ego, that I am an individual separate from the all. And the moment we start that separation, we start all trouble. So the reality is nothing but the infinite self that we are. All trouble is saying I am an individual separate from that one infinite all being. Therefore, the only practical methods there are those which help us let go of the false concept of being an ego, of being separate. There isn't a moment during the day that we are not practicing being an ego, unless, of course, we have the wisdom that we are not. And so the methods I propose are those that can and should be used all day, every day. We have so confounded ourselves so thoroughly by now that in order to undo this false belief that we are limited, we need a full-time givingness to this subject in order to realize what we really are, in order to let go of all the false ideas we have conceived of, basically that we are a limited body with a limited mind. Now, the first day, the key that I sort of threw out was, as one sees the world, so is he. As you see the world out there, so are you. At first, this might be quite shocking. The ego part of us rebels against it. But this can be used every day, all day, for checking ourselves to see what our consciousness is. It is impossible to see something out there that is not in our mind. There's nothing out there but our own consciousness. A master, a perfected being, sees only perfection. So if we would take this key and check ourselves during the day on all the especially negative thoughts and start looking within to discover the source of this, we will see that these thoughts are right in us. They are our thoughts. That horribleness that we thought was out there is right in here. Because we are in a state of the world that is relatively a low state, most of us are far more with negative thinking because we accept negativity, and therefore we can undo that negativity by facing it, by first learning how to discover this negativity, by saying that if we see it out there, it's right within us, otherwise we couldn't see it, and then using it to let go of it. Now, using it to let go of it is the most important thing. So we look out there, and anything and everything we see that is not just right, we turn inwardly and we look for this very thing within ourselves, and if we look honestly, we'll discover that that thought was right within us, that concept is our concept, that it doesn't apply to the other one, it applies right to us. And then when we see it, we automatically let go of it because we are seeking truth, we are seeking happiness. And it's ridiculous to hold on to the things that keep us miserable. So the first one was, as you see the world, so are you. Since happiness and sorrow is probably the thing that we are most concerned with every day, happiness and sorrow can be used as a means of growth. I want to interject here that any one of these practical methods, if used constantly, will give anyone full realization. Because there leads onto the very thing that's causing all the trouble. And if we undo that, realization results. Any one of these methods, if used constantly, will lead to full realization.